just as I promised, this is the video about the lesson. Before I continue on where we stopped, I'm going to make a quick recap on the things that we saw on Thursday, because I'm pretty sure most of you don't remember. So we basically mentioned that all animals need to breathe, and that's important because they will be getting the oxygen that the mitochondria needs to produce the ATP that will keep each of the cells alive. So that's the first thing that we mentioned. Then we remembered our diffusion concept as a process through which the oxygen or a specific substance is going to be moving from a high concentration area to a low concentration area. And in our case will be oxygen coming into the bloodstream, carbon dioxide coming out into the environment. And the third thing that we mentioned was that for diffusion to take place, it requires a membrane with three characteristics. The number one, it has to be a large surface area. Number two, it has to remain humid. And number three, it has to be selectively permeable, which means that only specific substances will be capable of crossing the membrane. Okay, sorry about that pause. It was just like for me to check the sound in the video, and I think it's good enough. If not, it's still, you can watch this video at home. You can watch it later on your own, on your iPad. You can use your headphones, and that way you can get all the information. Okay, continue with where we stopped. Now the following thing is basically what the lesson is all about. We want to talk about biodiversity and basically how different organisms are going to be breathing, how they are going to be absorbing the oxygen that they need for survival. So first of all, we gotta mention simple organisms, okay? Remember, we have simple and complex organisms, unicellular organisms versus multicellular organisms, and so simple organisms, including sponges, cnidarians, nematodes, and protists, they are going to be absorbing the oxygen straight into their cells. They will not need any special organs for breathing, like in our case, humans, we use lungs. In the case of simple organisms, diffusion of oxygen goes directly into their cells. And one example that I'm mentioning here is the sponges. If you remember sponges from our previous lesson, when we're talking about filter feeders, we mentioned that the sponge on the ocean will be absorbing the water through the pores, releasing it on the top. And while the water is moving through the walls of the sponge, it will be absorbing the nutrients, but not only that, it will also be absorbing the oxygen particles that are caught in the water. That way, the oxygen will move into the cells and will be providing of oxygen to the mitochondria to produce the ATP. Any questions about this? Okay, so that being said, we have also complex organisms, multicellular organisms like animals, like humans, and we require special organs to capture the oxygen. We cannot just get oxygen from the environment into our cells, into our skin. We need a particular organ that will be connecting to the rest of our bodies, okay? In this case, we have our lungs that will be absorbing the oxygen, passing it to the circulatory system, which will be providing the oxygen for every single one of the cells in our body. Now we will be talking about 4 types of breathing mechanisms, okay? 4 types in which animals can be breathing, or different types of animals are going to be breathing, okay? The first type of breathing mechanism is going to be the cutaneous breathing mechanism, okay? Cutaneous breathing mechanism. Now, I want you to remember this forever. Every time you hear the word cutaneous, it's going to refer to skin. And that's why it says through the skin. The cutaneous breathing mechanism means that animals are going to be absorbing the oxygen through their skin. Okay? Now, for this to happen, the organism needs to live in a moist environment. What does that mean? It needs to live in an environment that is constantly humid. Why? Remember, one of the 3 characteristics of the membrane for diffusion to take place is that it has to remain humid or diffusion will stop happening. For you to understand this, I want you to think about the first example, an earthworm. Okay, we all know earthworms, they usually live on the soil. We will be looking at them on rainy days and stuff. But I'm pretty sure that everyone has seen earthworms dried on the sidewalk. Okay, sometimes you're walking on the park and you can see the earthworm dead on the sidewalk. Now, why did that happen? Usually it happens after a rainy day. When it rains, there will be water everywhere. The soil is going to be very, very moist. and the earthworms are going to be crawling out of the soil, trying to cross the sidewalk or whatever, and at some point the sun will come out again. What happens when the sun comes out? It dries the water, it evaporates the water, everything will be dry. The earthworm that was crossing the sidewalk is going to be caught in the dryness of the sidewalk. Now, what will happen to the earthworm? The membrane through which it breathes, which is the skin, needs to be moist. The sun will be drying the membrane, and at some point diffusion will stop happening. When the membrane gets dry, diffusion will stop occurring, and that will make the earthworm to stop breathing. So basically, when you see an earthworm on the sidewalk, you're watching an earthworm that stopped breathing because of the sun basically drying the membrane, which is the skin through which they breathe. Okay? Now, if I make zoom here into the image, you can see we have the earthworm, and it has a section right here, so we can see into the different organs or systems that they have. And I'm not an expert on worms, so I really don't know what all of these things are about. But what I think about these little tubes that are surrounding the center, or that are around the skin, is that they could be some sort of circulatory system. Okay? When the air or the gas is exchanged through the membrane, the oxygen will be captured into the circulatory system, pretty much the same as we have in our capillaries around the alveoli. And the circulatory system will be capable of releasing or basically transporting the oxygen to every cell in the body of the earthworm. Okay? Now, I want you to think about this in a way that, like to make a resemblance with our respiratory system. We have our lungs through which we breathe. We have our alveoli that capture the oxygen. The worms, instead of having lungs, instead of having alveoli, they use the skin to diffuse the oxygen, okay, from the environment into their bodies, and carbon dioxide will be the other way around, from their bodies outside into the environment. Does that make sense? Is that clear? I'm going to pause a little bit, so if you have any questions, you can pause it, you can ask your teacher, you can go back on the video. I'll give you a couple of minutes, okay? Now, if there are no more questions, we can continue with the next breathing mechanism, okay? The next breathing mechanism is called the bronchial mechanism. Now, this mechanism will be using a structure, a specialized structure that we call gills in English. In Spanish, we call them branchias. Okay, now you may have an idea of what we're talking about. Basically, it's going to be a system that we can find in aquatic organisms, okay? Animals that live underwater. The branchias, okay, their gills, are going to be found basically on fish. And I'm pretty sure that everyone has an idea on what the gills are, basically the things that fish will have around their neck. When I was your age, I thought they were ears, okay? Now I know that they are not ears. They are basically specialized structures through which they are breathing. Now, I want you to realize something. It says the gills are going to be filamentous structures. What does that mean? Filamentous structures refers to special things or special structures, special organs that are going to be thin and, how can I say, like long or thin and like hair-like structures. I'm going to show you an image in the following slide, and it might be a little bit better to understand. The important thing here is that this bronchial system is going to be found on animals underwater, particularly fish, but we can have crustacean, mollusks, along other examples, okay? One thing that I want you to know is that little flappy thing that the fish have on their sides, it's called an operculum. Okay, now the operculum is just like a protection layer, a flappy tissue that will be protecting the gills. Now, it's just like we have our rib cage, our chest cavity protecting our lungs from damage of the environment. Fish and other animals will have the operculum to protect the gills that are inside. The gills are important because they are absorbing the oxygen, and without protection they can be damaged, and if they are not working properly, basically they don't breathe properly, and well, you know already what would happen. If you do not breathe, well, you stop getting energy, and if you stop getting energy, basically you run out of life. Any questions before I move on to the next slide? Okay, so on the following slide we have a couple of examples, well, 3 examples basically. we have different types of animals living underwater. They will have a branchial system, but they will not all look the same way. For example, we have the axolotl compared to the shark and the fish. In the case of the axolotl, here, we can see that their gills are external. Now, I want you to take a look on these structures right here. These pink reddish structures are the gills. And now, remember when I mentioned filamentous structures? That's what I was referring to. Okay, these hair-like structures. They are thin. They are long. That's what a filament refers to. Filamentous will be describing this particular structure right here. Now, you can see that the axolotl has the gills on the outside. It doesn't have anything protecting them. Okay, well, maybe he's just not caring about his gills getting damaged, or maybe he's just abusing of the fact that he can regenerate any part of its body. Okay, that's one of the great things about the axolotl. That's why he's so fascinating and amazing. Besides, the other thing, I don't know if you knew, but the axolotl can be found, or let's say its native environment is Mexico. Okay, we can naturally find it in Mexico and not anywhere else in our planet. The sad thing about the axolotl is that it's endangered. Okay, it might be extinct if we don't do something soon. But that being apart, I want you to see the gills. Okay, these structures right here, each of those hairs that are coming out of his neck are designed to absorb the oxygen from the water. Okay, they are swimming on the water, they are happily swimming everywhere, and the gills are in contact 24/7, all the time are in contact with water. They are going to be absorbing the oxygen without any trouble. Okay, that's how they are breathing. They don't need to do any kind of movements like we do when we breathe. Our diaphragm will be controlling our breathing, inhaling, exhaling. They don't need to do any of that. Whenever they're swimming, the water in contact with their hair is going to be absorbing the oxygen. Then the oxygen will be coming into the circulatory system, and it will be traveling all the body to get to every one of their cells. Is that clear? Good. I know I'm talking a little bit fast. It's harder on a video to kind of see if you're understanding, like to make a pause, to go back. Maybe you're raising your hand and you are not pausing the video in time. I hope your teacher is pausing the video. If not, well, you can pause it right now and get all the questions answered. Or you cannot pause it and just keep on listening, okay? So, the other two examples, we have the shark and we have a fish. Now, both shark and fish will be having these structures right here. You see these little lines right here? Maybe on the image it's not so clear, but you can see it on your iPad, okay? And we have the fish right here, okay? Now, this structures is the one that I told you it was called the operculum, okay? The operculum is going to be protecting the gills. In the inside of the operculum, beneath the little flaps, you will find, again, the gills. They are very, very similar to the ones in the axolotl. You see, these hair-like structures are going to be found also underneath the operculum of the fish. Now, how are fish going to be breathing? In a different situation than the axolotl, the fish, they have to do something. Again, just like we have to move our diaphragm for breathing, they also have to do movements with their mouth. I am sure that everyone has seen this, maybe on TV, or maybe if you have seen a fish tank, if you have a fish tank at home. Every time the fish is swimming, it will be opening its mouth, okay? It will be swimming, and basically what they are doing is they are swallowing the water, okay? It's not swallowing because it's not going into the digestive system, but they will be passing the water through their mouths into the operculum, okay? They will be swallowing again the water through the operculum so that the gills may be in contact with the water. And that way the gills are going to be absorbing the oxygen and they're going to be breathing. That's how they are going to be keeping the oxygen amount in their bodies at an optimum level. The same thing goes with sharks. Any questions right here? Okay, I'm going to pause it a little bit. I want to check that the video is working properly. Otherwise, I'm just speaking and nothing is getting recorded. So I'll be right back, okay? Okay, now I'm back. I just want to mention that I've never seen me giving a class before, and it's kind of weird because I just realized that I speak a lot, I speak fast, and I now get why you have so many questions when I'm teaching. But it's okay. The good thing about the video, you can pause it anytime you need, anytime you want. Not to go to the restroom, okay? Pause it to answer your questions. I don't want any questions to be left behind. It is important that you understand all the information right now, because remember, when I come back, there will be a quiz about this lesson. So you better have all your questions answered. You can rewatch the video at home. Yes, you can. You can rewatch it right now if there was something that you didn't understand from my speaking, or you can pause it and ask your teacher to help you understand what we just saw. Okay, that being said, I'm going to move on. Now we have the third breathing mechanism. Now the third breathing mechanism is going to be known as the tracheal breathing mechanism. And yes, the word tracheal comes from trachea. Just as we have our windpipe that brings the air from our pharynx into our lungs, the tracheal breathing mechanism is going to be formed of different tubes that work the same way as our trachea. Okay, they're going to be called tracheal tubes, and they're going to be dividing into smaller and smaller tubes. Now, in the case of humans, our trachea divides into bronchi, and the bronchi continue dividing into the bronchioles. Now, in this case, we have the tracheal tubes. They're going to be dividing into smaller trachea, and we call them tracheoles. Now, what are they going to do? They are going to be absorbing the oxygen. They're going to be diffusing the oxygen into the cells of the organisms. Now, what kind of organisms are going to have a tracheal system? We will find most insects, okay, like centipedes, grasshoppers, bees. I think butterflies have that too. And what will happen is just that they will be breathing, and the air will be moving through the tracheal system, and oxygen will be passed into the cells. It's pretty simple, okay? The tracheal system is going to be connecting every single cell of the insect, or it will be carrying the oxygen to every single cell of the system. Okay? In our case, okay, humans, our lungs, our alveoli, they are surrounded by capillaries, and those capillaries take the oxygen from the lungs to every single part of our body, thanks to the circulatory system. The thing about the tracheal system is that the tubes are going to be stretching to the different parts of the body of the insect. Now, the next thing that I want you to see is right here, the name Spiracles in bold letters. Okay, don't forget to take notes, that's important. Now, the spiracles will refer to the tiny structures on the side of the insect, okay, on their bodies. Those spiracles are going to be in charge of capturing the air, okay? When we breathe, the air comes through our nose or through our mouth into our lungs, into our respiratory system. In the case of the tracheal system, in the case of these insects right here, they will have these openings on their bodies. And those openings are going to be basically like their nose, okay? They're going to be absorbing, they're going to be breathing in the air, and it will then travel all the system of tubes to carry the oxygen to all the cells in their bodies, okay? Trachea, tracheoles, spiracles, yes, so far so good. Let me show you the next image. Right here, okay, we have another diagram of the same grasshopper and the same information that I just explained. So there's no need to stop that much here. I just want you to see the image, okay? This is the same grasshopper that we were seeing before, but the difference is that they put like the skin or the rest of the grasshopper in a white color, so you can see the tracheal system. Okay, you can see how the spiracles are going to be bringing the air inside, and the tubes are going to be stretching to the rest of the body. Okay, the oxygen is going to be moving. You can see all the way to the head, all the way to the tail, and they have some sort of circulatory system that will basically carry the rest of the oxygen to the, let's say, the farthest parts of their body, like the legs or the antenna, the wings, or any other part of their body that they need oxygen to. Okay? Any questions about the tracheal system? Nope? Okay. I know you're pausing the video and stuff, so I don't need to actually ask you if you have questions, but it helps me to feel like I'm there with you because, well, just remember I'm in Japan. Yeah, hello. Okay, so the thing is, no, I won't bring you anything from Japan. I told you before I left. Maybe I'll bring you a candy or two, but I cannot bring you anything else. Okay, let's continue with the lesson. Yes, please and thank you. Okay. Okay, now I just realized that your teacher, okay, it's not only me. When I do these kind of comments in the classroom, it's only me and you, but now we have a teacher that is listening to me, and I'm not sure if she will find it entertaining. Okay, well, I hope she does. Now, let's continue with the lesson. I'm pretty sure you started taking notes while I was making my silly jokes. If not, please start taking notes right now. Our fourth breathing mechanism is going to be the pulmonary breathing mechanism. Now, the pulmonary breathing mechanism is something that we are familiar with. It's the system that we have. It's our mechanism. And if you need some help to realize it, okay, pulmonary, you see, pulmon as the lungs, okay? Pulmonary breathing mechanism will be the one that animals use. Animals containing lungs will use. Now, to be more specific, all terrestrial vertebrates breathe with lungs, okay? All terrestrial vertebrates. What does that mean? Every single animal that lives on land that has a backbone will have lungs for breathing, okay? Now, I just want you to remember as a definition, the lungs are going to be organs inside the bodies that will be made up of millions of air sacs that we call alveoli, okay? Every animal will have lungs. They may not be the same shape as we have them, okay? You have seen our lungs, well, not our actual lungs, but you have seen images of the lungs, but not all animals will have the same shape and obviously not the same size, but they are going to be made of alveoli that will be capturing the oxygen and connecting it to the circulatory system, okay? This is a diagram. Basically, again, we have the bronchioles, the alveoli, and the capillary that will be connecting or absorbing the oxygen into the bloodstream, okay? This is pretty clear, so I'm just moving on. And right here I have a diagram that is basically showing the different animals, different examples of the breathing mechanisms that we have mentioned. We have the lungs with the chicken right here. We have the gills for the fish, the spiracles for the caterpillar, okay? Tracheal system for the caterpillar. And we have the sponge right here. I told you the sponge uses simple diffusion, okay? Simple breathing mechanism. The water will go through the walls of the sponge and the oxygen will be moving into each one of the cells that are in contact with the water. Now, in the case of the spider here, okay, don't pay much attention about it. It won't be on the quiz, it won't be on the exam. But I want you to realize that they call it a book lung, okay? In the case of spiders, being insects, we would expect them to have a tracheal system. But the thing is that their organ is called a book lung, basically because of the shape, okay? Well, this image doesn't look like a book at all, but if you search for the definition or if you search for the anatomy of a spider, you will realize that the structures that make up their breathing organ will look or resemble an open book with different pieces of paper, okay? But that being said, any questions or about the examples? Okay, I think it's pretty clear, okay? Lung, gills, tracheal system, simple, and what was the other one? Well, those are the four ones, okay? So, moving on. Right here, I have an image, okay? Now, the great thing about this image is that it's an animation. I know it's not moving right now, and it won't be moving in your iPads either, because it's a PDF, and, well, PDFs, they don't have animation. But when I come back, I can show it to you on my laptop or on my iPad. And the animation is basically showing how oxygen and carbon dioxide are going to be exchanged inside of the breathing system or the organs. Okay? In the case of humans, we already know about it. And the tracheal system is not that hard to understand. So I'm going to zoom in here with the bird breathing mechanism. The reason why is because they have a very, very peculiar way of organizing the respiratory system. Okay, this won't be on the quiz, it won't be on the exam, but I want you to realize something. And the reason why is because when I realized it, when I understood why they had this particular organization, I was amazed, I was surprised, and I want to share that with you. Okay, maybe it's nothing for you, but I just want to share it. Okay. So I want you to see right here, they are zooming in, right here, and this is basically oxygen and carbon dioxide being exchanged. Okay, sorry about that. You may see that there's a difference between the previous video and this one. I was interrupted. Well, the thing is that the space on my iPad ran out, so I had to change iPads. And so I'm recording again, and I hope this one has enough memory for me to finish the lesson, okay? So let's continue on where we stopped. I was explaining about this diagram right here, and I'm going to zoom in now. I'm going to zoom it in a little bit. I want you to realize something here about the bird breathing mechanism. This is a little bit slower to manipulate, but well, there it is. So, we have the bird respiratory system, and I was telling you it's amazing because of the way it is organized. In the case of birds, they will be having oxygen at all times. Okay? When we breathe, when we humans breathe, if you think about it, we get oxygen when we inhale, but we don't get oxygen when we exhale. We inhale and oxygen is being absorbed, but when we exhale, the air is coming out of our lungs and carbon dioxide is being released into the environment. We're not absorbing oxygen no more when we exhale. But in the case of birds, it's not like that. When they inhale, they get oxygen. When they exhale, they get oxygen. When they inhale again, they still have oxygen. Why does that happen? Because of these structures right here. This part is where the oxygen will be exchanged with the carbon dioxide. When they inhale, okay, think about it like for the very first time they inhale. They inhale one time, oxygen will go to the first section of the lungs, okay? Oxygen is being absorbed. When they exhale, air will move to the second part of the lungs. They will continue to absorb oxygen. They are not really exhaling yet, but air is moving to a second part. When they inhale again, oxygen will move to the third part where oxygen will be exchanged with the carbon dioxide, and they will be stored in the third part. And when they exhale for the second time, air is going to be removed. It's going to be exhaled and literally taken out of the body. So if you realize that they have oxygen every single moment. They inhale, they absorb oxygen. They exhale, they continue absorbing oxygen. They inhale again, so they have new air here with oxygen. When they exhale, they get rid of their carbon dioxide, but they still have oxygen in this part. They re-inhale, so oxygen comes new into the first part. So if you think about it, they will always have oxygen available inside their lungs. There will always be oxygen being absorbed for their muscles to move. Now, why is it important that birds have oxygen available? First of all, you know they fly, right? Birds, usually they fly, and when they fly, they might fly very, very long distances, especially when they are migrating, okay? For that to happen, they require large amounts of energy, and that will only be possible if they have large amounts of oxygen. So that's why they need this special organization, for oxygen to be available, for energy to be produced, and basically for them to fly away forever. If they didn't, then they will get tired, they will fall down, and well, it wouldn't be nice to fall from the sky, right? At least not for a bird. Well, not for anyone actually. But the point here is, if we had a similar organization, if we had this kind of lungs inside of our bodies, you could be running 10 laps to the football field without getting tired. You could run a marathon, you can win prizes and stuff. You could run for 100 hours straight, and well, you will need to stop and eat a little bit. But the point is that air will be enough for you to continue exercising. That's the difference, and if you ask me, that is amazing. Now, if you didn't find this amazing, then you can leave my classroom and don't come back until Monday. But I'm not there, so I won't realize it if you're actually going out of the club. Okay, don't worry, you don't have to leave. You can stay, but I mean, it's really amazing, okay? If you didn't see it, then, well, too bad for you, okay? Now, let's move on to the next slide. This is where I'm going to stop the first part, okay, like the first session, Monday session, this is Monday, this is supposed to be Monday, this is where you are supposed to stop right now. You need to stop today's class right here. If it's Monday, that's okay. If you have free time, like if you have more minutes to spare, do whatever you want, just don't be too loud. We don't want to get in trouble. You don't want your teacher to be mad at you. So just relax and wait for the bell to ring. If this is Tuesday that we're talking about, let's say you didn't finish the part to yesterday and you're just finishing right now, well then move on to the next part, okay? You keep on going to the next slide, okay? If it's Monday, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a very nice day. If it's Tuesday, keep on going. Thank you. Well, good morning everyone. This is supposed to be the second part of the video, like the second section. This is supposed to be Tuesday, second day for you, same day for me. I'm wearing the same clothes. If you realized that I recorded the same day. But the thing is that this is supposed to be the second part. This is where you are supposed to begin on Tuesday. Now, this part on Tuesday is a little bit shorter or a lot shorter than yesterday's part. Okay, so if you were not done with the first part on Monday and you just finished like a couple of minutes ago, being Tuesday, then you keep on going and you will find the second part done pretty quick. Okay. Now this is where we will continue. If you realized, yesterday this is the last thing that we talked about. Now today this is where I'm going to start. I just want you to remember a very, very tiny thing. Okay, plants, they also breathe. Okay. We started this lesson talking about how every single living thing breathes. Every single living thing requires some sort of breathing mechanism for them to stay alive. Plants is the same thing. They need to breathe. They also exchange gases with the environment. They also need oxygen, okay? They have photosynthesis, but they also need oxygen for different things that we will talk about later. But the point here is that breathing for plants will be a little bit different, because they will be inhaling carbon dioxide, they will be exhaling oxygen. That is basically the opposite as we do. And they don't have noses to breathe in, they will be using their stomas. If you remember that from the photosynthesis lesson, the stoma is that opening on the bottom part of the leaf, where they will be basically absorbing the air or the gases. They will be exchanging them through the leaves thanks to the stoma. But you remember that. That's why I didn't ask you to take notes on this slide. It was just a reminder. Plants also breathe. Is that clear? Good. Perfect. So next part of the lesson. Now this part of the lesson, if you ask me, is the most complicated. Okay? It's the most complicated to understand because it might be something new for you, especially because of the words. We have two types of respiration. Okay? Two types of respiration. We have aerobic respiration and we have anaerobic respiration. They are very simple to identify, very simple to make the difference between one and the other, but this might be new information for you, so it might be confusing, but I'm sure you will get it, okay? The only thing here is you need to compare and identify what's the difference between one and another. If you ask me, it's very simple to think about them as being opposites, but, well, you will get it in a minute. So the first thing that you need to know is that aerobic respiration takes place in the cells of heterotrophs. If you remember properly, an heterotroph is basically an organism that eats other organisms for food, like gets their food from other organisms, okay? We as animals, we are heterotrophs. So we are going to have aerobic respiration. Now the word aerobic comes from aero, which means air, okay? Which means that we'll be using air for our respiration. But that's not new for you, you already knew that. We breathe air. Yes. Now, aerobic respiration takes place in the cells. Where exactly it takes place? In the mitochondria. We have talked about this before. We mentioned that when we breathe, the oxygen goes into our cells, oxygen goes into the mitochondria, and is used to produce the ATP, to produce the energy. Okay? That is what we call aerobic respiration. We mentioned the respiration equation before. If you remember properly, let me grab a marker. If you remember the equation for respiration, we mentioned that we will have oxygen plus glucose, and this will produce ATP, it will produce carbon dioxide, and it will produce water. Now, this equation, this respiration thing, is called aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration, and it takes place in the mitochondria. Okay? Is that clear? That's aerobic respiration. Now, what is going to be happening? We will be using oxygen, okay, to release energy. We release energy from carbohydrates. Remember, glucose is a carbohydrate. So that's aerobic respiration. We grab oxygen to release energy from carbohydrates, and it takes place inside the mitochondria. Is that clear? Yes. Okay, now the second part of this lesson, okay, second part of this part of the lesson, we have anaerobic respiration. Okay, aerobic, it used air, it used oxygen. Anaerobic is going to be, let's say, the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but if you remember your English lessons, the prefix an right here means without. So anaerobic will be without aerobic or not aerobic, which means without air or without oxygen. So that's the first difference, okay? Aerobic, anaerobic. Oxygen, no oxygen. Now, what will happen in anaerobic respiration? Or who will be doing anaerobic respiration? We will have chemosynthetic organisms like yeast. What is yeast? Yeast is levadura. We have talked about levadura, I think last week we mentioned it when we were talking about fermentation with Mr. Pasteur. But the thing, fermentation. So the thing is that microorganisms, they're going to be using anaerobic respiration. What for? So what for? To release energy from carbohydrates with no oxygen. Okay, they do not need oxygen to release energy from the carbohydrates. In other words, if we grabbed this equation, we would remove this. You see? And now it is anaerobic respiration. So they will grab the carbohydrates and they will produce energy without the need of oxygen. And if there was no oxygen, then we will not have carbon dioxide, or we won't have water. Well, that's a different part of the lesson, so don't worry much about it. The point here is that anaerobic respiration, also known as, aka, also known as fermentation, is a process in which but microorganisms will release energy without using oxygen. Okay? Those are the differences. Aerobic uses oxygen to release energy. Anaerobic, no oxygen, releases energy. This one takes place in the mitochondria. This one takes place in the cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm of these chemosynthetic organisms, autotrophic organisms, okay? Not heterotrophs, not humans, just autotrophic organisms. Now, we as humans, we use those organisms. We use their fermentation for different things. We have mentioned that before with Louis Pasteur. We mentioned that we use fermentation for alcoholic beverages, like we mentioned beer, we mentioned wine, we mentioned tepache, we mentioned several others. But not only for beer and those drinks. We can also use fermentation for cheese, for bread, for yogurt, and different types of food products that we can produce thanks to the fermentation technique. Now I'm going to stop here. I want to give you a couple of minutes just to make sure that you identified everything, that you understood everything perfectly. If you want to pause the video, if you want to ask some questions, raise your hand right now. Pause the video. No, I'm just kidding. Pause the video for real and just let your teacher explain, or go back in the video and hear the explanation again. Okay? Pausing on pause. Let's continue now. Okay? Anaerobic and anaerobic. Next slide. This is the last thing of the lesson. Last slide on the presentation. Anaerobic respiration in humans. A few seconds ago, or a few minutes ago, I told you that anaerobic respiration did not take place in humans. Well, guess what? I lied a little bit. Okay? Anaerobic respiration can take place in humans, but it's not going to be something, how can I say, something we depend on. It's not going to be something that our body or our, our system will be based on. we will not depend on it to produce our energy. We will based on aerobic respiration. Now, what will be the difference? When will anaerobic respiration happen? It will happen when we have intense physical activity. Okay? I don't know if you have done this, but sometimes athletes, okay, people that do sports, they will be exercising a little bit too much. Maybe this has happened to you. Okay, I know some of you play basketball, soccer, football, volleyball, they swim, or whatever sport, even dancers, they can have the same thing. When they exercise for too long or a little bit too much, if they push their muscles a little bit too much, the next day they will be in pain. They will be swollen, they will be sore, they will be in pain, it will be hurting, like to laugh in your abdomen, or if you move your arms, if you walk, they can be in pain if you exercise too much. And the reason why is because you did fermentation, you did anaerobic respiration in your muscles. Why does this happen? When you exercise too much, you need to breathe faster. But if you don't take a time for breathing, your muscles will need to produce more energy because you need them to keep on moving. If your coach is asking you to do 100 push-ups and you are in number 50 and you're already tired, okay, your coach will push you to keep on working, but your muscles cannot work no more. So what starts happening? You need to breathe faster. But if you don't rest and you don't breathe more, your muscles will keep on working and they will go on plan B. Plan B says, you don't give me oxygen, I will get energy from somewhere else. So what do? Anaerobic respiration. When that happens, the muscles will start swelling, inflamming, yes. They will inflammate, they will swell. Okay, they will inflammate because anaerobic respiration produces something called lactic acid, okay? When I talked about fermentation in the previous lesson, I mentioned there were 3 types of fermentation: alcoholic fermentation, acetic fermentation, and lactic fermentation. This is lactic fermentation. Your body, your cells, your muscles will use anaerobic respiration to produce more energy without oxygen. The downside is, the negative part is, that lactic acid will be produced. It will be accumulating in your muscles and they will be hurting your muscles. Okay? That accumulation of lactic acid is the one that causes pain in your muscles that very next day. Okay? That day after you exercise, you may feel a little bit swollen, a little bit inflammatory in your arms, in your legs, in your abdomen, or any muscle that you were using. But the very next morning, oh surprise, you're in pain. You cannot walk properly. You cannot stretch your arms properly. Why does that happen? Lactic acid accumulation in your muscles. Now, there are 2 ways in which you can prevent this from happening. Okay? There are 2 ways. Number 1, you breathe when you exercise. Okay? When you're exercising, you need to breathe. And that will only happen if you take your time. I don't know if your coach has told you or if you have seen any videos on the YouTube, but there's a proper timing for breathing when you exercise. And you can ask your trainers. When you do an exercise, there is a moment for you to breathe in and there is a moment for you to breathe out. Okay? When you're doing push-ups, when you're jogging, when you're jumping, when you are running or whatever, there is a time for you to breathe in, there is a time for you to breathe out. If you keep that properly, if you do that properly, your muscles will not fall into anaerobic respiration. They will not fall into producing lactic acid and you will not be in pain. Okay, that's the first way. You breathe when you exercise. Now the second way in which you can prevent this from happening, after you have exercised, okay, when you're done exercising, you are done training for the day. Even if you have pushed yourself a little bit too much, you stretch your muscles, okay? You stretch your arms depending on what you were doing. You stretch your legs, you stretch your back, okay? Everything to the sides or whatever. That will give your muscles a time to relax, to release all the lactic acid that they were working on or that they were producing. That lactic acid is going to be removed from your muscles, and the very next morning, guess what? You will not be in pain because the lactic acid has been removed from your muscles, okay? So remember, when you're going to exercise, you breathe properly and you stretch. before and after you exercise. That way, you will not be on pain. Is that clear? Okay. Any questions about this? Did you take notes about this? You sure? Okay, so as I said, this is the very last slide. There's no more things to be said about this lesson. Now, if it's Tuesday, if right now you're on Tuesday and you're done and you still have time, just relax. Don't make a lot of noise with the ones that are coming in. You don't want your teacher to be mad at you, so just chill, relax. Spend the time. Maybe you want to review your notes. Maybe you want to pause it right here and make sure that everything was understood perfectly. Maybe you just want to listen to the video on your own. You can do that as well. So yeah, that's it for the lesson. Now, it is important that you get all the information straight, because again, there will be a quiz when we come back. So make sure if you have any questions, you raise your hand, you tell your teacher, and make sure you get everything clear. Now, if it's Wednesday right now, and you're just finishing the lesson, you're just finishing this video, then you start working on your activity. Maybe you will not finish today, but don't worry about it. Okay, make sure that you paste it, make sure that you work as much as you can, and make sure that your teacher signs it before you leave. That way I will know that you were working. Even if you didn't finish, you were working during the class and you were not playing around, you were not wasting time, you were working. And that's good for your classwork grade. Okay? And back again, if it's Tuesday, you can relax, wait for the bell to ring. Tomorrow you will have an activity, you will have the whole class to finish it. It will be more, there's a fly right here. There will be more than enough time for you to finish on Wednesday. Make sure you paste it, make sure you get it signed, okay, on your notebook, biology notebook, don't forget that. If it's Wednesday, remember that tomorrow is Thursday, you're going to the lab. You will be taking care of, like Diana will be taking care of you. Remember to be nice to her, remember to behave, don't be messing around, don't be playing around, don't be misbehaving. Just be nice to her. I think it will be an interesting session, the one on Thursday. It will be actually about fermentation. No, we're not going to be producing alcoholic beverages, boys, so please keep those thoughts out of your head. We will be doing fermentation. Well, you will be doing fermentation because, again, I'm in Tokyo. So the thing is that you will be doing a very nice session with Diana, and try to be nice to her. Okay, we want her to keep on working with you. We don't want her to hate you. So more. Just kidding. She doesn't hate you yet. I don't know. Okay, but the thing is, be nice. Be nice to her, and don't forget, Thursday you have to bring your homeworks. Your teacher Laura will be picking up the homeworks for me. Make sure you find her. Make sure you give them to her. The homework you have to give it to teacher Laura. Okay, before the second recess, because she's leaving at that time. So make sure you give it to her. Is that clear? Any other questions? If there are no more questions, then you can feel free to do whatever you want. I will see you next week on Tuesday. And just between you and me, we will be talking about my trip most probably. I will be answering some questions about the lesson. Because on Wednesday next week, okay, Wednesday next week, you will be having a quiz. So make sure you review the information, make sure you have all the notes, and that will be it for today's work, for this week's lesson, okay? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, well, too bad for you, because you've already seen it, and most probably you will have to see it again when you study. And if you liked it, well, just give me a thumbs up, just subscribe, share it with your friends, and be happy about it. And well, yes, I mean, I don't think there will be more videos like this, or maybe yes, I don't know. If you liked it, maybe I will start recording my lessons, and you will have them available on a YouTube channel for you to review when you study or whatever. But I don't think it will happen. So the point is, have a very nice week. Keep on working hard. Keep on having fun. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you when I come back. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.